This lesson is now solving polynomial equations and applications of factoring. So, now that we know how to factor, let's use it to solve equations. In order to do this, we're going to use something called the zero property. That says if you multiply two numbers together and you get 0, then either the first factor is 0 or the second factor is 0. And they could both be 0. Here's the first one. So the first thing you need to make sure of is it's set equal to 0. And in this case, yay, we have it. And the second thing you have to make sure is this factored? And it is. So I have two factors. X plus 4 is the first one. So either x plus 4 is equal to 0 or x minus 2 is equal to 0. So we're going to subtract 4 from both sides here. X is equal to negative 4. I'm going to add 2 here. X is equal to 2. So I have two solutions here. X is negative 4 or 2. Just write it like that. All right, now let's look at B. Well, there's three factors here. This little guy in front, so x can equal 0, or this guy, 3x minus 4 is equal to 0, or x minus 2 is equal to 0. So x is equal to 0. We're already all set to put him in there. He doesn't have to be solved. This guy needs a little bit of solving for linear equations. I'll add 4 to both sides. Divide by 3. X equals 4/3. So I'll put 4/3 up here. Or, well, this one's, I'm just going to add 2 to both sides. X is equal to 2. So there's actually three solutions to this polynomial equation. So, how to solve it? Write the equation in standard form so that one side is 0. Factor. Set each factor with a variable equal to 0. Solve the resulting equations and you can check each solution. So, here we go. We'll start off with the straightforward one. This is already set equal to 0, but this is not factored. So we're going to factor this as, well, it's the same sign, positive. Factors of 2 are 2 and 1. I check my cradle, the same thing I'm doing with factoring, just the same old, same old. Set each of these factors equal to 0. Yay! And we get, you're like, well, do I have to do the minus 2? No, you can just write down, now you know x is equal to negative 1 here. So negative 2 or negative 1 the variable can equal. Next. Let's look at this one, B. Ooh, it's not set equal to 0. So I need to move this x over to set it equal to 0. So this will be 9x cubed, take away x is equal to 0. Now I'm going to start my factoring process. I look at it and I say to myself, wow, I can pull out an x. So I'm left with 9x squared, take away 1. Good? Then I say, ooh, this is the difference of two squares. So I go 3x plus minus 1, 1, still equal to 0. Now we can set each one of those factors equal to 0. So x is equal to 0. 3x plus 1 is equal to 0. And I'll do this. Can't help myself. 3x minus 1 is equal to 0. Well, this guy is already solved. Boom. This guy I'll do a little math on. Good. And this guy I'll add 1. So I write my little solutions here. 0, comma, negative 1/3, comma, 1/3, and I have squigglies around it indicating it's not an ordered triple like it was when we solve systems of equations here. All right, so I'm like all set to set x equal to 0, but I can't because it's a 3 over here. So this one's kind of more involved. I have to distribute my x and then bring my 3 over. Good? Now I factor my brains out. I say to myself, well, see, did you just see how I did that binomial thing right away? Because in my mind, I'm looking at this already and saying that there's no common factors. So I kind of jumped the gun on that, but there isn't any. So now, remember how I said to try the most broken down way first? This is a negative, so the signs will be different. Good? And then I'll do a -3 here and a +1 here. And I go to check my guys. And I go, oh, that's not right. So I take my eraser out and I realize that I have that 11 guy in there. And that's pretty big. So what I'm going to try to do, and I don't normally do, is I'm going to pull out the 4 and the 1. So I'm going to put a 4x here and an x here and then check it. So in, I'm going to have a 1x, out a -12x. Now I'm all set. I have -11x in the middle. So it's factored quite nicely. We set each factor equal to 0. So x is equal to 3. Take away 1, take away 1. X is equal to -1/4. 3 and -1/4. Perfect. Next. Now let's take out problem solving. Yay! Figure out what you're trying to find and represent that variable in the problem. Set up an equation, solve it, and check the results. So for number 3 here, I'm just showing you that you can set things up. The first one is 2 consecutive integers. Consecutive means one after another, so if I have 12, the next one would be 13 or one more than it. So for this one, I could let x equal the first integer and x plus 1 equal the second integer. Perfect? 2 consecutive even integers. Well, if I have 4, I'm starting with the number 4, and the next even integer would be 6, 2 more than it. And it's the same setup with odd, because even and odd integers are 2 apart, and so are even integers. So I would set it up as x is the first, and x plus 2 is the second. Okay. Da-da. All right, now see, the length and width of a rectangle. We want to represent them, whose length is 1 less than 3 times the width. So let's let x is the width. I write measure because it's the measure of the width. And the length is 1 less than, so I'm going to do -1, 3 times the width. So when you have less than, you stick that thing at the end. So 3x minus 1 is the length measure. Perfect? Next. Now let's take a look at this problem. A hiker drops his compass from the top of a 40-foot cliff. The height h of the compass after t seconds is given by h is equal to negative 16t squared plus 400. When will the compass hit the ground? So here's my compass. All right. And here he is. Okay. Now you're like, well, how am I supposed to figure this out? Well, h is height. And on the ground, the height is equal to 0. So I'm going to put 0 in for h. And now, is this looking pretty good? Yeah, y'all. We can solve this problem. I'm going to write it like this because we want to solve it for time. Perfect. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to factor out a negative 16. When I do that, I'm going to be left with t squared take away 25. Now now I'm going to factor even more. So negative 16, t plus 5, t minus 5. Perfect? So now what I'm going to do is I don't set negative 16 equal to 0 because it doesn't have a variable in it. I can divide through both sides by negative 16 and get rid of it. So either way, you don't, if I do that, let's do that. You get t plus 5, t minus 5 equals 0. So I set each factor equal to 0. So t is equal to negative 5. T is equal to 5 seconds. Now normally there would be two solutions to this, but since our variable is in terms of time, this gets rejected. So the compass will hit the ground at 5 seconds. Number 5. The product of two consecutive page numbers is 110. Find the page numbers. So, all right, there you are. You're like, I know what the answer is already, right? But we're going to set up the equation anyway. So it's two consecutive page numbers, so I'm going to let x equals the first page number, and x plus 1 equal the second page number. Perfect. Now we're going to set her up. Product means to multiply them. Now, this is what I want to see. I want to see the process. I don't want you just to get the answer, because I know that most of you can see what the pages are. I'm going to distribute this x through, set it equal to 0, and you're like, when do we know we have to set it equal to 0? When there's an x squared in the problem that doesn't leave. You set it equal to 0 and factor. So we are going to factor this, and you're like, this is a no-brainer, I so get it. This is going to be a positive 11 and a negative 10. So when I do this, x equals negative 11, x equals 10, I reject negative 11 because you can't have a page marked negative 11. So x is 10 and x plus 1 is 11. Now we're going to write out our little solution here. The first page is 10. The second page is 11. Yay! And then we put like a little guy here because we're sophisticated, because we wrote out a sentence associated with the problem. Now you can go do the lesson associated with it. Good luck and stay strong.